All right, hey everyone. We just recently finished our first standard and possibly the only standard Weiss Schwarz tournament at Macquarie today. And Mark came in with a pretty spicy deck list that really didn't let anyone play the game at all. So he'll go through why standard is not a supported format right now, and why everyone should just not play standard. So I'll give it, Mark. Please explain your deck a bit and talk about the combo, and then why you built your deck this way with only 4 Climax.
Hey guys, so standard is a very good format where you just stop your opponent from playing, because we have something called infinite combos, and surprise, surprise, they are not even that hard to do to begin with. So let me just quickly pack this up and pull out the important pieces.
And you won all your games, right, today?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
And most of them ended with my opponent conceding. So let's start off with the main idea of the combo. We have a light detector from Konosuba, a event called Beat the Demon God Deity from Disgaea, and these 2 cards themselves will allow you to basically grab any card from your waiting room into your hand. So what we need to do is have exactly one card in our deck, and we need to have one of the Killing Demon God, which has the ability of returning up to 5 non-climax cards from the waiting room back into your deck and shuffle. It also does something else which gives power and soul, but it requires you to return exactly 5 cards, and you're not going to do that, and it doesn't really matter for the sake of the combo. And then the Light Detector is a pretty funny card. So in essence, what it does is your opponent will check the top of their deck and tell you what level it is, except they can choose to lie. And then your job is to declare whether they are lying or not, and they will flip the top card to verify that. And if you get it correct, as in if they did lie about the level and you said they lied, you will draw 2 cards. If you said they are telling you the truth and they were, then you also get to draw 2 cards. So the idea is that once you play something that allows you to look at the top of your opponent's deck, then you have information about whether they're lying or not. And in all subsequent plays of the same event, as long as the deck hasn't changed, you always know whether they're lying, and you always draw 2 cards. So how this combo actually works: you will need a card that checks the top of your opponent's deck, 2 copies of the Light Detector, and 1 copy of the Disgaea event. You also want another 2 copies of your Light Detector in the bin, in your waiting room, and 2 copies of the Disgaea event in your waiting room. So we'll just set it aside like this, and we'll put the rest of the deck somewhere else. Typically in a game, the entire deck should be in your waiting room, apart from what's in your hand and level. There will be exactly 1 card left in the deck, and we'll talk about how to achieve that later. So what we'll do is we will activate the Disgaea event to return only 4 cards, which is 2 of the Light Detector, 2 of the Disgaea event. And remember, the last card in the deck can be anything, and at the moment we don't actually know what it is. So now we have 5 cards in the deck. We will play our check top to look at your opponents so that you're guaranteed to be able to draw 2 with your Light Detector. So playing 2 of them allows you to draw 4 cards. And there are some possibilities. So one possibility is that you happen to draw the exact 4 cards that you've just returned. Or you could have drawn the last card remaining in the deck and have either one of these 2 left in the deck. if we did draw the exact same 4 cards that we just put back, now bear in mind that these are now in the waiting room, what we will have to do is play 1 copy of the Disgaea event, return 0 cards with it, so then you have these 4 in the bin, and then you play the second copy, putting those 4 and start again. So the idea is that we want to draw that last unknown card in our deck into our hand. Play both, draw 4. We've done it. And as I explained before, the remaining card will be either a detector or a Disgaea event. If it's a detector left, that means you have 2 of these. If it's a Disgaea event that's left in there, that means you have 2 detectors. If you do have 2 detectors in your hand, then it's the same setup that we just had before. If you didn't, then that's fine. So we'll play this version, return only the 2 detectors that's in your bin back in the deck. Remember that this card is a detector. So it's 3 copies of detectors in our deck, and we will draw 2 of them. So you're now back into the hand combination of 2 detectors plus 1 Disgaea event, plus some extra card here. So far so good. So what we can do next is, now that we know the last card left in our deck is a copy of in this case, it's a detector. So what we can do now is we can return, using our Disgaea event, the 3 cards here in our bin, plus any card of your choice. So this is where the concept of the loop is. You can use this loop to do technically anything you want. So what I've chosen to do on stream, because it's fun, is to use Kazuma to keep playing Janken with my opponent. So we'll put our Kazuma with these 3 cards back into our deck. So again, we have exactly 5 cards. And for those of you who might not be familiar with this combo, right now the deck has 2 copies of the detector, 2 copies of the Disgaea event, and the Kazuma that we return. So we'll use our event to draw 4. And similar to the previous situation, you have some different outcomes, and depending on the outcome, you'll do different things to make sure that the Kazuma goes into your hand. So in the case when you don't, that's you drawing the 2 copies of your events each. And then we do the same thing, play the first one without returning anything, play the second one to return those 4, and try to draw our Kazuma. And when you do draw your Kazuma, hopefully we'll draw it here. And again, you're either going to be having 2 detectors plus 1 Disgaea event, or 2 Disgaea event plus 1 detector. If we do have 2 Disgaea event, then we'll return the 2 detectors from our bin, so that the 1 detector turns into 2 detector. And that's basically the loop. Now some of you might point out that Kazuma has a requirement of experience level 2 in your level, and you might not be able to achieve that. So we did have some contingency planned, which is a event that burns 1 damage. So where do we get the stock from? Well, very luckily, there's multiple cards that allows us to do that. We have Kaoru from Madoka, and Kaon from Bang Dream. Both of their effect is an act ability that puts themselves into stock as cost. The actual resolution of the ability is not something that we're going to care about. All we care is the fact that it's a card that turns our hand into stock. So what we'll do is, for example, in this case, let's just ignore the Kazuma. We want this in our hand, so we will return, using our Disgaea event, a copy of Canon, and then the rest of our combo pieces into our deck, and we'll draw it using our detectors. draw 4, and we've got it in our hand. And then we're going to do the same thing to grab our event as well by playing this, returning 1, 2, 3, 4. And use 2 detectors. And the 2-1 event is in our hand. As I've explained before, if you do only draw 1 detector, that means the last card in your deck is a detector. So you use the first copy of your disguise event to return 2 detectors back into the deck, so that you have 3 of them in the deck, and the 1 detector turns into 2 detectors. You always want to have 2 detectors plus 1 disguise event in your hand to go off. Alright, next part. We are ready to do the burn 1 by sending our card into stock and pay for it, pay for our 2-1 event. But some of you might have noticed, if you do the burn 1, you are now in the position where you don't know the top of your opponent's deck anymore, so your detector might whiff. That's also fine. We just have to make sure that we have a copy of our top check again. But that's already on the field, and there is a small possibility that you might not have enough in the bin. What can we do? We can use this card from Cinderella Girls. Its ability is act, send a character from your field to the waiting room, and give a music character 1/5. The important point here is it's able to kill one of your characters for free without any once per turn restriction. So what we can do is, again, using the same idea, we want that card to be in our hand, play our Disgaea event, return these 4, and play your detectors so that you draw into it. And in the off case, which will happen, if the card that you want to draw into happens to be last, so the 4 cards that you drew looks like this, then same idea, play the first copy, returning 0, and play the second copy, returning those 4 back in, so you try again until you draw it. 2 detectors. There we go. And then we can play this card. Remember, this is on the field, it looks a bit confusing. This is our bin. I'm just putting that aside. These cards are on our field. We want that card to be in our hand, so we'll use Sire to kill it, goes into the bin, and then we'll use it to return it and draw into it. Draw 2, and draw 2 again. We only drew 1 out of detector, so we'll use the Disgaea event to put 2 detectors back. And draw, so that we have now 2, because the last card is also a detector. Just one more step before we start the burning. We'll play this onto the field. We'll put it into stock. This is actually part of my hand, as for those who are following. This is our stock. This event has requires you to tap one of your characters. So what we'll do we'll probably play something down for it to tap. So we'll grab something, a second copy of Kano or Kaoru, that works as well. We'll do. Play our event, return Kaoru and these 3 into our deck, draw into it using our detectors. Play this because we only drew 1 detector. Turn our 1 detector into 2. Oops. And then we'll play our Kaoru. You can resolve your check top effect if you like. Play our event. Rest it. Pay 1. And deal the 1 damage. So the top of your opponent's deck has now changed, and we just play our top check again, and we're back to the beginning where we know what's on the top of their deck, and we can use the same loop to grab the combo pieces to do the burn, and we can keep dealing damage until your opponent loses. So that's the idea of this infinite loop. And then in terms of the actual deck itself, there's quite a bit of thought that I put into it that allows you to do this loop much easier than it looks. At the very beginning, I explained that we want to have 2 detectors, 1 Disgaea event, and 1 top check in our hand to start with, and also 1 deck. Now, these cards are not the, how do I word it, exact copies that you'll need in your hand to be able to go off. For example, the top check can be replaced by a 3rd copy of the detector, because after you play the first copy of the detector, you know what the top card of the deck is. You can just randomly guess whether they're lying or not lying. So that also works. Alternatively, we can replace one of the detectors with an event from Phantom that says, choose one of your standing characters on the field, put it into clock. If you do, draw 2 cards. So they are functionally the same as detectors at the beginning of the loop by dealing 1 damage to yourself. But once you go off, then you'll be setting yourself up so that you have these 4 cards in your hand. But to start, it's perfectly fine to have the event from Phantom to do the drawing for you. And thankfully, because of the fact that this event exists, I've also realized you can actually start off your combo with 2 copies of the Disgaea event and only 1 copy of the draw, which can be either the detector or the Phantom event. So what you would do if you do have a hand like this to start is, so this is your bin, play one of the Disgaea event, and the cards that you'll be returning are a bunch of detectors. So in this case, because we have the Phantom event in our hand, it will be 4 detectors. If you have a detector in your hand, there will be 3 detectors and a copy of the Phantom event. And the reason why we're doing that is because you have that 1 unknown card in your deck at the beginning. You're returning 4 cards that says draw 2, so that when you use your first draw 2 after playing your top check, you are guaranteed to draw into at least 1 of the draw 2s. You might draw into 2 draw 2s, and if you play the second draw 2, you are always back to the setup of 1 detector, 1 Disgaea event and 2 draw 2s. So that means there's a lot of flexibility with your starting pieces. Like I said, you can have something like this that will work. You can have, take that out. That works as well. And then you can replace that with one of the check tops. That works as well. So getting the correct pieces to start off the combo is actually not difficult at all. What's probably more difficult, I would say, is how to get yourself to exactly 1 card. And remember, you also have to be level 2 to be able to do your combo. So this is where the next part of the deck comes in. We have a very unique card that actually almost doesn't exist in most other sets, which is Cube. Cube says when this card is in the front row, your other character in the middle slot of front row that has a magic trait gets the ability of clock encore. And we have Megumi, which is an on-death Akatsuki. So by using these two cards, if you play something with magic trait on top of your Megumi, you can clock encore yourself and clock encore again, taking 2 damage in the process and triggering your Megumi, so you will mill your deck fast enough from maybe 30 cards all the way down to exactly 1 card. I'm not going to show the actual milling process because that's something you guys can probably experiment at home. Alternatively, you can also use the sire that we have shown before. And some of my cards are upside down now. That's okay. Where did I put my sire? There you go. I actually like having this to do my milling because it gives me more control. So you can use a sire to kill the Megumi and encore it back, and then you have the option of whether you want to do the pay 1, discard 1, look at top 4 immediately, or you can keep clocking yourself. Whereas if you're applying a magic character on top, then you are locked into the commitment of doing all of these in one continuous set of resolutions. Anything else we want to talk about?
So you've done the milling, you've gone through the combo.
Let's talk about how to get the pieces. So even though I did say that it's not too hard to get pieces, we still want to talk about, we still want a good way of grabbing them so that you go off as soon as you can. And for those of you who looked at the entire deck that I've shown before, you notice these are the 2 cards. That's very good. When I first started making the deck, I thought about come and play draw 1, discard 1s, but as it turns out, those are quite inefficient. But we have Kazuma, which says come and play, pay 1, discard any card, look at top 3, grab any of them into any 1 card into your hand. So it's like a better version of draw 1, discard 1. And then we have an even better version of Kazuma, which is, what's her name? Lumia from Sneaker Bunko, that allows you to look at 4 cards instead of 3 at the condition of having to discard a magic character. Well, thankfully, a lot of cards in our deck happens to be magic, including our Infinite Janken Kazuma and our Cube. So having to discard a magic character is not too difficult at all. And also, Cube, which is a quite important piece to milling our deck. To be able to grab that easily, we have this 1/1 alarm from Planet. It's actually a very good card that a lot of people are not aware of. What it says is when this card is at the top of your clock, if you only have 1 character on your field, that character gets the ability of when it attacks, you can search for any character from your deck and add it to your hand. So clocking this early means you can grab whatever character that you need to be able to set up your combo, and you're good to go. One last thing to talk about, I suppose, is the choice of checking the opponent's top deck. There's several cards that does it. The actual most ideal choice happens to be not in this deck because I couldn't get that card. It's a box topper that recently came out from ReZero Snow Memories. It has the ability of looking at opponent's top 2, and it's a magic. So in that sense, it's better because you'll be able to grab it from your Megumi. But because I didn't have that card, I have to come up with the next best choice, which is this one from Kemono Friends. And the reason why is because this card has the second ability that says when you play a Climax, you can return the card to your hand return this card to your hand, and look at top 2 cards of your deck. Choose any card to add it to your hand and discard card. So it's one of your digging. And that brings me to the very last point of why do we play climaxes in the deck. Ideally speaking, in a very competitive standard format, where everyone is aware of this combo, you can expect everyone to be playing something similar, and therefore climaxes are redundant because you're going to die anyway once they do your combo. So the absolutely correct way of playing this deck should be using 0 climax. However, I didn't expect everyone to know. I probably expect no one to know. And if they do realize that you're not playing climaxes, you're probably going to get rushed very, very hard, and that makes your life a bit harder. And given how the tournament that we just had is somewhat casual, I also expected someone to play plus 50 souls, and there was one. So you would have just died to plus 50 soul instantly. And plus, you do need to attack a couple of times before you start going off your combo, and the off chance of triggering a book allows you to draw a card, which helps. So I decided to play exactly 4 climaxes, which I felt was a good number. It didn't hurt the consistency of the deck that much, and it allows me to cancel a bit of times so that I don't die too fast.
Okay. So let's talk about a very, very competitive format. What is a counter in standard to this deck?
So when everyone first saw me playing the deck today, there's a very intensive discussion session between the players about how it worked and what to counter with it. And some of them has already figured out the best counter is High Elf 1/0 from Goblin Slayers, which has the continuous ability of saying that both players can only play 1 copy of the same event once in the same turn. And if you play a standby, bring that out in level 0, with the current build at least, there's absolutely no way to get rid of it. And you just simply cannot do your combo because you have to play this like 10 million times. Whether there's any counter solution to High Elf, I'm not sure yet. I haven't thought about it. I didn't expect anyone to play High Elf today, so I didn't bother looking into it. Potential solutions that comes into mind are some of the cards that bounce your opponent's field, but they typically have a relatively high cost or comes late at like level 2, so they may not be ideal. We'll see. And maybe one of you might be able to figure out something that's better. Some other obscure or slightly less effective counters is, bear in mind that we do need 4 detectors to be able to do our combo. So if one of them gets sent to memory somehow, that's going to be GG. And conveniently, P3 has a level 0 that does exactly that. It's a come in play, choose an event from your... Oh, it might be the opponent chooses, but it sends a event from your opponent's waiting room into memory. So if one of your detectors gets sent to memory that way, then GG. But I guess that itself is not always common, because you're not going to discard your detectors if you drew them. So for them to be in your bin, it would be damage that you've eaten, and then you would have to either cancel with it or you went to level up before they have a chance to play that exact counter next turn. So it's something that you can outspeed in a way. If you grab the pieces before they can do it, then that's not really a counter. Other counters, there are certain cards in various sets that stops you from playing events for a turn. Some of them comes in the form of Climax combos. So if they can do that every single turn, then good on them. Other than that, I think that's all the counters I can cover at the moment. Because you're using events, and the other main reason why I put event burns into the deck, even though my plan was to play Janken 24/7, people do play anti-burns, but anti-burns only stops auto abilities from characters. Definitely do not stop event burns, so you can't really counter that.
All right. Okay. Cool. That was a very interesting deck. Sure, it was very interesting for everyone facing it, and yeah, that's why that's why standard is not a format anymore. So so yeah, see you guys in the next Infinite Loop video with Mark then.
See you guys.
Bye.